Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
Congress was sort of stuck in a wait-and-see mode once the president demanded more attention was directed at passing his election security legislation, an effort that, again, was thwarted by procedural rules in the Senate. Joining me to explain how things went down and what to watch for after their brief recess next week, Bloomberg Government Deputy News Director Loren Duggan. Loren, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't we just start off with the main recap of everything that happened in Congress last week as it pertains to really anything?
Well, I mean, it was a short week for the House. They were due to be in for 4 days, left after 2, and that's because they couldn't move the business that they had intended to on the floor last week, which was supposed to include the National Defense Authorization Act, a major bill that they try to do every year, but they couldn't get enough support within the Republican conference to move that onto the floor, in large part, but not only because of the Save America Act, this election administration legislation that Donald Trump and his Republican allies really want to advance. And that's kind of been overshadowing business the last couple of weeks and will continue to do so, I'm sure, when they come back after their July 4th break.
Yeah, it keeps on coming back. They even had bipartisan housing bill that had passed, and the president had said, no, I'm still sticking to the Save America Act. What is going to be the end of all this? I'm sure you don't really know, but is the Save America Act not going to ever get passed until there's a change in the numbers, or is the president just kind of hoping he can outwait Congress in getting anything done until it is passed?
Signs point to no on that. I mean, you can never predict the future, right? But the challenge here has been the math in the Senate and whether there are enough votes to get that over the line with the current rules that the Senate operates under. You know, maybe there's a bare majority support, but it would take, 60 votes to overcome a filibuster and get cloture in most cases. Some people want to change the filibuster procedure, blow it up. Donald Trump has called for getting rid of the filibuster on this to try and get it through. That's unlikely to happen. Alternative plan that's been floated is to use the budget reconciliation process, which allows Congress to pass things through both chambers with simple majority votes, but it has to be tailored to the budget and tied to fiscal matters. And it's kind of hard to do that with those rules and what the Save America Act would be, which is just to remind your listeners, it's about voter ID when you show up at the polls. It's about proof of citizenship when you register to vote, and a version that Donald Trump wants would restrict mail-in balloting as well. That has been cooler received on the Hill than the first two elements of that. So it seems unlikely that those paths are going to open up. And what House members are saying is, no, we should attach it to every must-pass bill we send over to the Senate so that they have to deal with this some way or somehow over the course of the year. But there's some opposition to this, and it's hard to see what that path is to get the president where he wants to on that piece of legislation.
In the meantime, what does that mean for the defense budget and the NDAA? Do they have a necessary timeline that they need to operate by? Because it's a massive budget, and defense leaders have already always complained about not having a good direction list when it comes to getting the NDAA and all the budgetary items. What does that mean for them while they sit around and wait for this to get passed?
Defense budgeting has been a bigger question this year just in general because of the amount the president requested, $1.5 trillion for the next fiscal year, and that's taken place in different legislation. So the National Defense Authorization Act, which is the bill that stalled last week, is setting policy for the department, reflects $1.15 trillion of that, which is the core discretionary part. There's also interest in passing $350 billion through budget reconciliation. That bill I talked about might be a vehicle for both of those things, but there are challenges with that as well, including time. And then there's the actual appropriations process that has to play out. Something needs to happen there by October 1st to ensure the government stays open. And then add to that, there's a request for supplemental funding to cover some of the expenses related to the Iran war and other needs that the administration has identified. So there's these 4 bills out there. They can't really move on any of them right now. They were stalled last week heading into this recess, and time's going to be the biggest obstacle. The House is only supposed to be here for 2 weeks in July, maybe the Senate for 4, a little window in September and a little window after the elections is all that's on the books right now. They could change schedules, of course, but time is going to be a major component in trying to get any of this done.
We're speaking here with Loren Duggan from Bloomberg Government. And yeah, for the folks like you and I who cover this kind of stuff, it's almost like we're in an audience of a boxing match and we're going around going, who you got? Instead, it's, do you think there's going to be shutdown? So let me put that question to you. What are the likelihood of that happening? As you know, it's an election year. There's going to be even more turmoil. You can foresee a lot more stalemates on the horizon. Do you think we're heading for another one with the current attitudes and temperature check going on in the Hill right now?
You can't rule it out, and you don't know what lines in the sand are going to be drawn around what's most likely going to be a continuing resolution, not a full resolution of everything, but pulling this year's funding levels into next year to keep things operating. Probably people want to leave and go and campaign, and they can't really do that if the government's shut down, or it would be hard to do so. We'll see if either in this period in July or more likely when they come back in September, if they can get some sort of funding element done, at least to get them through the election, and then maybe see how the elections shake out and what to do there. But, there's a non-zero chance of a shutdown, as we would say, just because there's not a clear path on these things. And even getting simple things or routine things to the floor has proven difficult the last few weeks.
That's a very good political answer. You should run for office yourself, I think. And with it being an election year, is that why even some members of the president's own party are a little wary of the Save America Act, just because their campaign strategies are probably set at this point, right? And if you change the rules of the game so close to the actual date, they'll have to shift and, all of a sudden focus more on, getting more people registered, making sure that even their voters are qualified to vote. I mean, is that kind of what the drawback is in their eyes?
In some ways, some people don't want to change Senate rules because they like the way the institution operates, and there doesn't seem to have been the support there for that, which that's kind of more of an institutionalist perspective. But at some point, it's going to get potentially too close to the election to actually make some of these changes that they would need to make. But we'll see if that factors in, especially if this doesn't get done and remains a live issue. There are some senators who would give up campaign time, by the way, to spend every day here trying to debate that piece of legislation to get it over the line. Senator Mike Lee was making a lot of calls for that. For example, he's a Republican from Utah. But election year politics do tend to creep up in a lot of these discussions. And really, you have to look at the narrow margins in both chambers. If some of the things that were hiccups for the House had much smaller people, this had about a dozen or so Republicans that were standing in the way of moving forward last week, not just because of Save America, some other things as well. But yeah, the election is kind of an ever-present thought in a lot of people's minds.
With both chambers out next week, any dates that we should be on the lookout for coming to mind other than those obvious budget deadlines? Are there any other sort of hearings that we'll need to be on the lookout for, or what have you all set for your editorial agenda?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what they can get done in this July work period, and nominations are also going to be there. Todd Blanche for Attorney General and a new pick for Labor Secretary Sonderling. See if they can get hearings and get through the Senate. The president will want to get as many nominees as he can between now and the end of the year on the chance that maybe he doesn't have control of the Senate or has an even narrower margin there if Democrats make inroads. So nominations will be a big thing, government funding top of mind, and all these other things they'd like to get done before the end of the year, including things like crypto regulation, which has been a big priority for members. There's no deadline around that, but there's a lot of push to try and do something.
Loren Duggan, Deputy News Director for Bloomberg Government, thank you as always.
Thank you.
And you can find this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive and also wherever you get your podcasts.